Hello, guys. Welcome to episode 3 of the Weekly Wave. I'm Alex, and I'm going to be going through the 10 albums of the past week that I came across in the past week and listened to, and I'm going to rank them from 10 to 1 in this new format. I think in the previous couple of episodes, we've kind of taken on a three-category sort of format where we sort of separate the albums out into the three different sort of qualities, and I think that's going to be a tough way to take it forward. And the reason for that is this week's 10 albums that I've come across have been including some of the strongest albums I've looked at over the past 35 to 40, and I think in this case it might be easier just to rank them 10 to 1 instead. I think if I was going for categories this week, it would be very, very top heavy in terms of what would make the sort of the highlight section. So yeah, I'm just going to play around with this new format, and hopefully it's something that translates well. And I will be discussing 10 different albums today. The 10 albums are going to be Scowl's "How Flowers Grow." Probably shouldn't list them off in the order that I'm going to rank them. So I'm going to do some magic now. I'm going to read them off the page in a completely different order, and you're never going to know what order I rank them until the end of the video when you've watched the order that I've ranked them. So we've got The Dares' "What's Wrong with New York," Porch's "Pool," Avenged Sevenfold's "Live at the LBC," Scowl's "How Flowers Grow," Das Effects' "Dead Serious." We've got Destroy Boy's "Funeral Soundtrack number 4," Drug Church's "Prude," The White Stripes' "Self-Titled," The Alchemists of the "Genuine Articulate," and Queens of the Stone Age's "Era Vulgaris." So yeah, without much more introduction, let's get into ordering these albums out, and let's see what can land on the number 1 spot for this week. So apologies for the little vibration there. It turns out that using a phone as a way to prop up your own phone isn't great when notifications are switched on. So we now are going freehand. I'm probably going to collapse at some point. You're going to get a shocked look on my face as I try and steady the camera back out. And yeah, we'll wait until that happens, and then you get to see it live. So we're going to start off with number 10 here. Number 10 being Scowl's "How Flowers Grow," and this was an album I was quite excited to listen to. I tracked it down because of the news that Scowl had been signed to Dead Oceans, which is a pretty major indie label. Sort of Mitski, Phoebe Bridgers, a couple of the standout artists signed to that label. And it surprised me when I heard this news because I had heard Scowl in passing, hardcore, young, up and coming band, and definitely not the kind of thing you'd usually typically find on Dead Oceans. So I was interested to see what their previous material was like, if it would maybe translate well to the label. I think maybe the days of labels focusing on a certain genre of music is mostly in the past, but certainly this seemed like a one that stood out as being quite far from the typical lineup, the typical roster for the for Dead Oceans. So I went back and listened to the Scowl album, and I found it to be a little bit underdeveloped. Definitely the sound of a band just starting their career out. Didn't have the most fully realized strong songwriting. There was a good guitar tone. It was heavy in parts, but as with a lot of hardcore music, it's very rare you find an album where, no matter the quality, you don't start to feel a little bit of monotony in the kind of the sound of the songs, the sort of structure. Songs can tend to blend into each other very easily, and that can be great if the songs are good. If the material's worth listening to song after song of, no problems there. But in the case of this Scowl album, I just thought that there wasn't enough of a strength to any of the songs to really justify a full album of it. I mean, obviously, justify a full album of it, justify listening to a full album of it. I thought it lacked in a lot of ways, and that might have just been an inexperience on the part of the band. Hopefully, being signed to a more major label, more eyes over it, sometimes can help. Bigger budget can help, certainly. And maybe just more time, less financial pressure, all of those kinds of things. So they're what you hope to see for bands like this, where they can sort of realise what they really want to do. And going from a shoestring budget to major label budget has done wonders for bands in the past. So I'm hoping that this band Scowl can take it into a positive direction, develop from here. And if there was a song I would say to check out from that, it's Seeds to Sow. Probably the one that caught my attention the most. Although I've got to say there wasn't an awful lot in here that I thought was honestly really worth listening to. So yeah, certainly not a band to give up on. They're a new band. They've got a lot of time to develop, a lot of time to grow. So let's see, hopefully where they can take it on Dead Oceans. But yeah, this week they land on the 10th position on the list. So at number 9 we have got Drug Church's Prude, and this is an album that just came out in the last couple of weeks, and I'm very disappointed to be putting it here at number 9 because Drug Church have been one of my favourite bands of the past 2 or 3 years, I would say. Their previous album, Hygiene, was for me one of the albums of the year in 2022, I want to say. Before that, Cheer was an absolutely excellent album, and they're one of those bands that they sort of straddle the hardcore and alternative rock at this point. I think this album would definitely tip them into that direction, and that was my major problem with this. It's just not the same quality as Hygiene and Cheer, and I think you could tell it from the songs and the build up. The single Myopic, I was a huge fan of. That was one that really kept me on board with my expectations going into this album. I wasn't sort of ready to give up on it yet, but just sort of with the way it was marketed, the album cover, it's just not something that, it doesn't feel like what you'd want from a band that has had such a strong previous couple of albums, and obviously that can range for different people. I think this album will open them up to a much bigger audience. The songs are a lot more accessible and catchier, but then that's always been one of their strengths, is writing these kind of hard-hitting, everyday political kind of songs. They've always had very, very good recurring lyrics on employment, what to expect, how to approach working, how to maintain control of yourself, how easy it is to get trapped in the system of working to live. And there's parts of that on this album. They reference it again, but it just feels like now it's part of the formula. It's part of their material that they can kind of dip into and return to. And there's nothing like I remember one of the songs off Cheer that I returned to a lot, Weed Pin. It's that song, I think, is one of the songs that most perfectly exemplifies the modern day of work culture, disposability of staff, and I think on this album they just kind of they've gone into this more shallow, easy to digest kind of route. And I think for a band like Drug Church, who are already more on the accessible side of hardcore, definitely a band that people can dip into as like a starting off band. It was just a bit disappointing to hear them not take their sound a little bit further and not to write stuff to the strength of what they've written in the past. So yeah, it's sad to say that they land on 9 on here. I had really high hopes for their next album. I've been looking forward to this since listening to Hygiene. Just wanted to get more and more Drug Church music, and this isn't exactly what I was looking for when I had their upcoming album in mind. So if you're going to check one out, Slide to Me. I thought it was very good. Don't get me wrong, there's good songs sprinkled through here, but in the past it was front to back quality, and in this case you are looking for the moments of quality a little bit more than you'd hope to for a band with the talent of Drug Church. So yeah, check it out anyway. Massive fan of Drug Church. If you don't like what you hear, then definitely give Hygiene and Cheer a listen. 2 of the best hardcore albums of the past few years. So yeah, Drug Church number 9. So diving into number 8, we've got Das FX's Dead Serious. They are an American rap duo, I believe, from the 90s. This album was released in 1992, and Das FX have been a band that I've been recommended really strongly by my fiance. She's always been a big fan of them. Had come across some songs. I'd heard a little bit of stuff, but never really sort of zeroed in on it and given it my full attention. So thought now would be a good time. It didn't look like a massive undertaking. It's not a long album. I think it's in the 30s, and minute length. So dead serious. This just I didn't know what to expect really going into it. I'm not gonna lie. It kind of what I'd heard in the past sort of sounded like it was that kind of chilled, laid back 90s rap kind of style stuff, which I'm a big fan of. I could listen to that stuff all day. It's good. Really, really good, strong time in rap's history, I think, the 90s and the late 80s. But you quickly realize when you listen to this album that they have a particular style of flow. This sort of the higgity hop, a wiggity wop, the higgity hop, the that kind of thing, and it's non-stop and it persists through the whole record. And I did find myself stifling laughs a few times at how dated that flow style sounds by modern comparisons. I mean, not to give too much away, but we have a rap album near the top of this list. And I think when you sort of listen to them side by side, as I did in preparation for ranking these out, just to see how far off this Das Effects album was, it really, really dates it. And rap from that time can tend to be a little bit dated anyway. The stuff that isn't dated is what persists. That's where you get your Souls of Mischief and Wu-Tang Clan and sort of rap groups along that line, even like NWA, things along those lines that haven't aged as much, despite being as old as what they are at this point. Now this is an album that sounds like a throwback, and not always for the strongest reasons. It has the boom bap production, it's not bad. It doesn't sound particularly dated in that way, but yeah, it was just lacking a lot for me to really be able to make it any higher up on this list than it made. So check out Straight Out the Sewer if you want to hear particularly egregious versions of that flow style I mentioned earlier. I've gone back to that for laughs a few times, but it's a good album. It's a good album. It holds up in maintaining its own style. It's a consistent album. And if you're into that dated style rap, then go ahead. You'll absolutely love it. For me, that's not as much the kind of stuff that I'm into, and that's what's pushed it down to number 8 on this week's top 10. So, yeah, Das Effects, you can check that out. Dead serious, and yeah, let's see what comes in at number 7. So at number 7, we've got Porch's Pool, which is a nice little indie album released in 2016. Very washed out, very reverby. I think the band seems to be headed up by an individual guy. I don't know what his name is, but he seems to take a lot of the creative control. The instrumental side of this album is quite limited, very like airy and sort of spacious and stuff. His voice is pretty good. He's got a very like sort of unique, distinctive style. Now, I've not listened to an awful lot of Porches, but I feel like if I heard a Porches song that wasn't from this album, I'd be able to recognize it through his voice. Because he has this kind of like low. I'm trying to think. There's a band. I think the singer featured on Frank Ocean's White Ferrari. I can't remember the name of the band, but it's quite a similar sound to that. Not got the strongest identity. But there's a lot of other bands that you could come across that have done a very similar kind of thing to what Porches is doing here. Is it Wallows, maybe? No, I don't know. I'm not going to try and just throw bands' names out there, but definitely there is Wallows comparisons with this, so because I do know who they are. And yeah, I think it's just missing a little bit to really be something I'd come back to consistently. I enjoyed it when it was on, no doubt. I mean, you've got to consider here that like my base level enjoyment of bands like Drug Church and stuff, it pushes it up there anyway. Like obviously I've still gone back and listened to a lot of Drug Church's stuff, and this album blew that out of the water, definitely, despite only being here at 7. But yeah, there's a song called Shape. It's very like atmospheric. I've sort of thrown that on a few times, so I've just been sitting around like playing a bit of video games or like reading or whatever, and it is good for that. it's not. I can't ever really imagine myself putting it on if I was like out and about, had my earphones in or anything like that. It wouldn't have like a strong enough palette to sort of overcome anything else. You've kind of got to have it as your background to what you're doing, maybe indoors or whatever. But I thought it wasn't too bad. I've written literally cool, not memorable, and I think that sums it up. Um, I think that this band's still around. I think people are still pretty interested in them. I think they might have something coming up. I've seen them recently talked about somewhere for some kind of reason. Hopefully a positive one. So yeah, check out Porches Pool. Not bad, just a bit of indie stuff. So yeah, that's it. Number 7. And at number 6, we've got Destroy Boys' Funeral Soundtrack number 4. So Destroy Boys have been a band that have, I think, had 3 releases before this one. Some repeat songs across a couple of them. I think they've kind of been a very EP heavy band. But I've listened to all of their music that they've ever released. I'm quite a big fan of Destroy Boys. They're a real strong up and coming, and I think have a massive potential for being a very, very popular mainstream band. And I think this album was a great first step in that direction. This is probably the first album on this list that I can be really excited about talking about. They have probably like reduced their sound down on the heaviness to be a little bit more pop oriented, and I think that's definitely something that really flatters them and works really well for them. The singer I've always thought has a really good voice, despite not being, I guess, what you call like technically impressive. I think they've always been a band that have thrived more off emotions and an attitude, and that's definitely something that continues here. I think the vocals have improved into this album. Sounds a lot more cleaned up, sounds a lot bigger budget, sounds like it's been worked on for a lot longer than maybe some of the previous material. It's got a good full band feel to it now, and a good range. I still think there's songs in there. There's a song with Mannequin Pussy on here, which is a little bit heavier. Of course, that's another really good band coming up at the same time you should definitely check out. And there was several songs on here that I think I'm going to find myself listening to a lot. I only actually listened to this album yesterday, so I can't talk too much to the longevity of how much more I'm going to be listening to it going forward. But you can just tell sometimes with certain albums that they're going to stick around for a long time in your mind. And I think a lot of these songs will be I'll be playing them out definitely through to the end of the year. So I really strongly recommend checking out Funeral Soundtrack 4. There's a song You Don't Know, which is probably my favourite. And I really enjoyed this one because following Destroy Boys on social media, I've seen a lot of the kind of pushback and the boomer audience and the kind of right-wing audience that stumble across it and across their music, and have tried to not all mend them just for the name of the band Destroy Boys, which is just sometimes you just can't comprehend the sensitivity of people to things like that, and the defensiveness of some people. So I really enjoyed this one. Definitely recommend it to you guys, and hopefully go and check it out. And Destroy Boys can continue to make great music, but they come in number 6 on this list today. And yeah, let's see what we've got down at number 5. So at number 5, we have got LCD Sound System's What's Wrong with New York, released this year. And I thought the vocalist sounded a little bit different. He's kind of got one of those voices, the LCD Sound System singer, where it really sticks out. But musically, they've definitely stepped forward into the future a lot. And this kind of sounds like a 2024 recreation of LCD Sound System, I would say. And when I was thinking about it, I was thinking, when you make such a drastic change like this, you could probably change your name too. And the Dare came to mind as a recommendation for a name for me, and that's what I'm just putting out there. If LCD Sound System would like to change their name to the Dare, I don't think it's too late. It's great stuff. Sleazy indie, it's bringing it back. That's all I was seeing. I was seeing the Pitchfork write-ups. I think people have been a little bit hot and cold on this one. But the Dare have come through with a good album here, and I think there was some credits on Charlie XCX's Guess, which is again one of the best songs to come out of the Brat life cycle this year as well. So hopefully under this new name, the Dare, LCD Sound System can just push on, keep releasing good quality music like this one, because I really enjoyed listening to this album. And yeah, listen to You're Invited. Massive throwbacks to the old LCD sound system stuff. So if you're into them from back then you'll love this new incarnation of them, The Dare. So yeah, check it out. Number 5 on the list, The Dare. So at number 4, there is this is one Era Vulgaris by Queens of the Stone Age. So this was a album that I've stayed away from for a long time because of recommendations from other people. Everyone just kind of considers this to be one of their weakest albums. It seems like that's a bit of a unanimous kind of take across Queens of the Stone Age's fan base. But I didn't think people could be much further wrong on this one because I really enjoyed it. I came across the single Threes and Sevens the other day from here, and that just kind of tipped me over the edge for, you know what, I'm just going to give the album a listen, see what happens with it. If it's any worse than some of what I think is the worst Queens of the Stone Age stuff, I thought I'd be very surprised, because I'm not a huge fan of the debut album by Queens of the Stone Age, as much as I loved all of the Josh Homme and Nick Oliveri's previous stuff, the Caius work. I just feel like that album it's a little bit on the indulgent side. You'd be shocked to hear from a Josh Homme project. But this album, I just thought it was great. It was kind of, I think this is the album after Nick Oliveri, maybe the second one after. I think Lullabies to Paralyze might have been before this one actually. But I think when Nick Oliveri left, it left a good gap for Josh Homme to take his songwriting to more of a pop, alternative rock heavy sound. Because I think even when you listen to those old singles from Songs for the Deaf, your No One Knows and Go With The Flow, there's still that strong stoner influence on the music from that time. So Era Vulgaris, I think, is really them at their pop best. Definitely beats out like Clockwork. I think it rivals Songs for the Deaf, and Threes and Sevens was great. Sick 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 was really good. But yeah, Threes and Sevens, for me, I can see why it was a single at the time. And I can see why they've persisted, Queens of the Stone Age, because they're just such a groovy, great band. And they always seem to have been. When you go back and listen to all their music, I can see why they always just snugly fit into whatever's cycling around in the current time that they release their music. I've still yet to go back and listen to the album, their most recent one, New Times Roman. We were at Download Festival 2020, maybe it was a 4-day one, and they were spamming the advert for that album, and it has scarred me from ever giving that a listen. So don't expect to be seeing it in New Times Roman review on this channel anytime soon. But definitely this Era Vulgaris was a lot better than I expected. And I went in with decently high expectations after hearing what I had heard from it. Make It With You as well is a really good song. And I listened to this, but picked up a copy of this physically yesterday, and I gave that a listen when I got in, and it was probably the best way to listen to it. It was a great pressing, like really strong, clear sound, and definitely a bit bulky through some proper speakers and stuff. So yeah, definitely if you're into Queens of the Stone Age, or even just more into your alt rock, give Era Vulgaris a listen. And yeah, it comes in at number 4 on the list for this week. So I might end up going on a bit of a tangent on this one, because at number 3 on the list for this week, we have Avenged Sevenfold's Live at the LBC, which is a concert album from 2008, when they were touring the White Album, which is, in my opinion, the peak of Avenged Sevenfold in their, definitely their songwriting, definitely their creativity. They kind of moved away from the thrashier early stuff of Waking the Fallen, and just managed to maybe, what's the word for it? They just kind of developed what they were doing on City of Evil, sharpened the right things up, refined their sound completely down to what worked to them at the time. Because of course at that time you would have had the Rev, the drummer who sadly passed away around 2 years after this album released. That they were touring at this time. Of course, this is the live album I'm talking about, so there's material spanning all of the albums up to that point, minus sounding the seventh trumpet, to nobody's surprise. And yeah, Live at the LBC is just, I would say what makes it stand out is it's not a pure concert album. Obviously it is audio from a live recording, and by all accounts at this time, Avenged Sevenfold were like sort of powerhouses of live performance. M Shadow's voice at this time was at its best. I think it was pre-serious vocal damage that sort of led him to change up his singing style in the 2010s with Hail to the King and stuff. But this album is so produced and touched up and ironed out in every way that it basically just counts as a normal studio release. Especially when you hear the backing vocals from the rest of the band in certain parts. You can just hear how much has been done to it, and I think most of the time you would say that's a bit of a betrayal of the live sound. If you're releasing a concert album, probably you should try and keep it as raw as possible because that's what you go and watch live music for at the end of the day. But in this case, I think for the band that Avenged Sevenfold are, I don't think anyone wants to hear a rough recording of their audio from a live show. And I'm actually personally really happy that they took the time to edit this album the way they did. I was a huge Avenged Sevenfold fan in my teenage years, and saw them back when they were touring the stage around 2016 time, I think. And they're a great live band, no doubt. Can't talk to them now with their new album. I've not listened to Life Is But a Dream, and I definitely don't want to see them anymore playing any of that material, because what I did here was not my taste for Avenged Sevenfold. But I'm not ashamed to say that the Death Bat tattoo is on my wish list. I'm hoping I can pledge my allegiance to Avenged Sevenfold fully at some point and embrace them into my life the way you might a religious leader and figure, because that's how strongly I felt about Avenged Sevenfold back in the day. But this live at the LBC, I think they picked their best material. And that is why my favourite song off it is actually their Seize the Day. It's a sort of deep cut, I suppose you could say, from City of Evil. Much more mature song, more like something that you'd probably find on the White Album, to be honest. But his voice during this show it's produced so perfectly that it really like takes you off guard how good they sounded at this time. And I loved this back in the day. I remember watching it on YouTube. I remember watching it when I was at the height of my enjoyment of them. And I actually watched the DVD copy that came with my Diamonds in the Rough album, and watched it with Rianne, showed Rianne all of that. We watched it together. It was very much me showing off one of my previous interests and and she really, to her credit, sat and watched it. I can't believe she did. But yeah, I think it's worth listening to. It's on Spotify now. It was uploaded in 2020, I think, around that time. So yeah, go and give it a listen. I think as far as produced live albums go, this is up there with the best. And yeah, it comes in at number 3 on this week's list. So coming in at number 2 for this week, just narrowly missing out on number 1 spot, is the White Stripes' self-titled album from 1999, which I managed to pick up a physical copy of on one of my recent trips away up north. We went up to Newcastle for a few days, and managed to find a copy of this album. All of White Stripes stuff seems to be doing its rounds on the sale at the minute in a lot of shops. I think I found all their albums are in rough trade for around 13 quid physical, and a great tip for anyone who does collect physical media. Third Man Records have fantastic pressings, really great pressings, and that is because Jack White, I think, is very involved in the remixing and the sound of his reissues of his music. I assume he owns all of his music. I think they might have always I'm not entirely sure if they've always released under Third Man. I don't know if that's something he was doing from the beginning, but definitely this pressing of this album for a debut for such an old album, it sounded great. It had been really re-realized. It sounded really like reinvigorated and fresh sounding, and I really enjoyed it. I can't say I've ever been the biggest White Stripes fan. There's been occasional songs I used to love. Doorbell, when I was like really young, that was one of the songs I used to have on my Walkman, on my little collection of CDs I used to have made for me via Napster back in the day. And there was nothing off this album that I recognised, honestly. I don't think people really go back to this first album all that often. I think it's more White Blood Cells and Distyle that people go back to. And obviously Jack White's making a big resurgence at the minute, and I think because of that reason, he's really been churning out things from his label. And these reissues of the old White Stripes albums have just been excellent from what I've heard. And this album, for something that's so old, so close to the start of their career, you can hear just how early they had a hold of their style. I watched a couple of live videos of their old performances, and just the way that the two of them, Jack and Meg White, connected up, the way Meg played around him, and a way that he played his guitar, because he's such a unique guitar player. And I think you can hear that now. His resurgence at the minute with his solo material has been so much better than you ever would have expected this late into his career. And his whole new style, his whole new appearance, the blue hair and all that kind of thing, it's just working so well for him. And I was really happy to go back and listen to how good this album was. It was a great experience listening to this one. Really bluesy. They've got the tone on his guitar through all of the White Stripes stuff is just so great, and you can even hear that in the singles, even songs like Seven Nation Army. It's what makes it stand out so much. I mean, people love the bass line, but the guitar work on all of the White Stripes stuff is next level. And yeah, really enjoyed this one. Really worthy of the #2 spot. The song "Do" was probably my favourite off the album. And yeah, White Stripes self-titled. Real big, great, happy surprise for this week. And let's see what has made the #1 spot ahead of the White Stripes. So #1 on the top 10 albums of the week this week is debatably not an album. I think this one probably more EP length. I think it was around 25 minutes long, and that is The Alchemist's The Genuine Articulate, just released in the past couple of weeks. And honestly, I was absolutely blown away by it. The Alchemist is I think the best rap producer working. He's just so prolific. Works with such strong, great rappers, great contemporary rappers, and I think you've got a lot to thank The Alchemist for when it comes to rappers like Earl Sweatshirt, Baldy James. Their work together is always excellent. And the people who performed on this. So you got there's a lot of collaborations between himself and Action Bronson, for example, and it's just a part of like New York scene rap that's so good at the minute. It's been strong for a number of years. It's probably the leading underground style of rap the minute, the greatest underground rap scene happening right now. And some of the songs in here were just so good. Just absolutely blew me away. It was there's a song Minnesota Fats with Action Bronson and Big Body Bears. If you've ever watched Fuck That's Delicious, you might recognize him from there. Just so good. There's so much energy in all these songs, and even when the songs are more stripped back and more low key, that's traditionally been where The Alchemist has shone through the best. I don't want to be too bold to say he was rapping a lot on this, but it seemed like a lot of the songs were featureless. The songs that had features were called out as features, so I think he might be back to rapping on this one. And The Alchemist he's such an underrated rapper himself as well. I went with a couple of friends to Birmingham to watch Action Bronson play. It was Action Bronson and Earl Sweatshirt's co-headline tour in the UK a couple of years ago, and The Alchemist was there emceeing for The Alchemist for Action Bronson, and he actually rapped a couple of songs himself, and honestly they were a couple of the best performances of the night. So yeah, really happy to see The Alchemist on here. I think he's been in my top 10 of the year for the past 3 or 4 years now, while I've been really tracking which albums I've been listening to. And I wouldn't be surprised to see this album make it onto the end of year list again this year, because it was just a really good, consistent, strong album. And yeah, the best song in here probably Details with Larry June, but there's definitely others you could call out. That, as I said, Minnesota Fats, and I think the closer as well is a really good personal song from him that I really enjoyed. So yeah, The Alchemist, Genuine Articulate comes in at #1. So to recap, at #10 we had Scowls, How Flowers Grow. Drug Church with Prude at #9. Das Effects' Dead Serious, #8. Porches, Pool. Destroy Boys, Funeral Soundtrack at #6. The Dare / LCD Sound System's What's Wrong with New York at #5. Queens of the Stone Age's Era Vulgaris at 4. Avenged Sevenfold Live at the LBC at 3. #2, The White Stripes, self-titled, and #1, The Alchemist, The Genuine Articulate. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this breakdown of the top 10. please go and listen to any of these that sounded like they'd appeal to you. And please join us again for episode 4. We'll be coming back with a new top 10. And cheers for watching, guys. See ya.